Hello, everybody. As Amy mentioned, I'm Rob Ruffler from Viacom Next. I'm sure many of you have never heard of Viacom Next before, and that's because we have been pretty quiet about our existence. But this fellowship with the New York City Media Lab was our sort of first foray into a public project. And essentially what we do is we explore how people will be entertained in the future. And what that means right now is virtual reality is a really heavy focus for us. So we prototype, design, and commission VR experiences with brands, creators, and artists. And so at the beginning of this year, shortly after the Outrage machine had wrapped up, we were really interested in exploring what it meant to tell a story in virtual reality. And, we weren't quite sure what what storytelling mechanics would work in VR. It's not quite film, it's not quite games, but it borrows from both of those. So we wanted to try a variety of different approaches. And we want to do that through working prototypes that we could demonstrate around Viacom and really get people excited about the possibilities. So with that in mind, the New York City Media Lab was an obvious partner for us. We had a great relationship with them from our previous seed project, and we just knew that they would be the right partner to help us reach a breadth of different students and alumni with varied perspectives. So Amy and Justin, they really helped us the whole way through with recruiting, and we wound up with a great group. They delivered, spoiler alert, we're going to talk a little bit about it in the panel, but they delivered, delivered on the promise of varied and different prototypes of ways of storytelling. Whether it was a lean-back, passive experience. In one experience, you're actually shackled as you watch a scene that's motion captured play out in front of your eyes. It's something that's much more immersive and, well, not more immersive, but more interactive. So the story sort of lives in the space and the objects, and by exploring that space, the story emerges and comes to life. So, the mentors in the program were really excited to participate. They had a ball. Senior leadership was really impressed with the results. The CTO, after he saw the demos, his reaction was, "I can't believe they did this in 8 weeks." I don't know if I mentioned it was only an 8-week program. And he's like, "We should hire some of these people." So we did. So 2 of the fellows have joined us and are continuing to help us explore virtual reality and beyond. And we're also looking. We're in the early stages of exploring a larger, bigger, and better fellowship program in the near future. So stay tuned. Right now, I'd like to introduce and bring out our 3 of our fellows who participated in our inaugural fellowship program. We have Michelle Santeo, Rosalind Paradis, and Tomo Mishigami. Hey guys. So I already know you, but these guys don't. So I'm going to ask you all to just introduce yourselves and tell us a bit about how you got interested in VR in the first place, and also, what program you were in when you applied for the fellowship. So Tomo, I'll start with you.
Hi, I'm Tomo Michigami. I graduated from MFA Computer Art, School of Visual Arts. Previously, I was working as a VR set designer at the Fuji Television in Tokyo. So that's why I got the interest in the VR environment.
That's great. Roz?
Hi, my name is Rosalind, and I'm a recent graduate of the Parsons MFA DT program, and I took a class my final semester of Parsons in virtual reality, and I made my first project there, and I really enjoyed something I've always been interested in as an interactive designer is the play between kind of the physical and the virtual spaces and how you can design in between them, and so virtual reality just felt like a really natural way to move forward with that interest.
Michelle?
And I'm Michelle Santio. I'm a graduate student at NYU's Game Center. And I got interested in VR because HTC Vive was demoing in our center and caught me. So at the next opportunity I had, I took a virtual reality class and started using the Oculus Rift.
Great, thank you. So why don't you tell us a little bit about the prototypes that you completed during the fellowship, and tell us a little bit about the narrative from the guest perspective. Why don't we start with you, Michelle?
So our prototype changed drastically throughout, but what we ended up with was kind of a ghost story. You as a user start off as a ghost, you're dead, and you, through a frame narrative of a ghost character that's there with you, you slowly realize that in order for you to move on to the next realm, you have to figure out who you are and how you died, and you can pick up different objects that transport you into different parts of your memory to figure that out.
Great.
So I love experiences that are somewhat absurd. And so when you open your eyes in this virtual reality world, you look around and you're inside a baby carriage, and there's someone talking about you, and talking about how poorly you've been behaving. And so I became really interested in this idea of mom gossip, like only hearing one side of the phone call. And so the first bit you have is that, and then you're given a bottle, and you're given other elements to interact with in this virtual world. And so the narrative between you and your mother figure play out in a way that encourages you to misbehave and kind of push the limits of adult authority.
Great. Tomo?
So my prototyping was like story about the ruined museum, and like people, the viewer can explore the ruined museum in a VR space. What I tried to is how can I bring the more immersive image into third-person and first-person storytelling VR experience.
Great. So I know in the initial pitch for your project, you had wanted to do things with computer vision using OpenCV to bring the user into the experience. Tell us a little bit about your process for technical prototyping and at what point you decided to change course.
So I thought I was going to use webcam and OpenCV in order to get the viewer's actual image and then bring into the VR space. But I succeeded partially, but eventually I got some another problem. So I decided to use another way, which is the building a full environment with computer graphics.
Great. Michelle, so you were one of the, actually the only team this go around. So you and Sam Von Aaron worked on your project. So you introduced a ghost character, and you also had a novel interaction to afford transitioning between scenes. I'd love to hear you describe the process of like how you incorporated those features into your project.
So when in our first iterations and our prototyping, we created the space, and we wanted a lot of the items in the space to kind of provide narrative and context for the character. But we slowly realized through awesome playtesters and prototyping that it kind of was disconcerting and weird and frustrating for someone to kind of just have to figure out what's going on without a frame. So then this ghost character was kind of born to frame this narrative. But she was really creepy, but she tells you that you're here, you're stuck until you wander around the space and you pick up different objects and you figure out why it is that you're not on the living plane anymore. And it ended up being surprisingly such a hit when we finally demoed Viacom. People were like, whoa, this character is so scary, it was so creepy, and they had no idea that it was definitely not a part of the plan in the beginning. And with the scene transitions, that was another personal favorite of mine in the final prototype. We found that when you pick up an object, say there's a rose in the house that you find yourself in, initially you picked it up and we had it so it was a broken rose, and then you would slowly turn it, and then it would come together back into its original form, and then the player would just kind of appear into this like next scene. But it was really jarring. People were like, what's going on? Why am I just like blinking and into this next scene? So we created a transition where it's kind of a shader that hazes and like slowly fades the user or the player into the next scene, and was also a really awesome success. So
great.
Yeah.
Okay, so Roz, I have to read this one. It's a long question.
Okay.
So you created a seated experience that intends to make the guest experience the world from the perspective of a baby in a stroller. As a recent grad from design school, how did you apply a rapid prototyping process to creating the haptic interactions in your piece?
I think something I've learned by working on like more large-scale interactive projects is just breaking it down into its most basic components. And if you think about the whole project, it's maybe a little overwhelming, but if you just try to say to yourself, okay, if I can accomplish this little thing, then that means that I can accomplish this and this. And for this process, this was my first time working with the HTC Vive, and prior to this, I'd only done one other virtual reality project. So that kind of method of working and prototyping was really helpful. And through the process, there were kind of some happy moments where I realized, oh wait, if I do this other thing, it'd be way more engaging. And so you need to leave space in the process to kind of have those happy accident moments where you realize the path you were going down might not be the right one, or maybe you could make it stronger if you went in a different direction.
Absolutely. Great. So for everyone here, I think your initial pitches were actually quite different from your final products. Michelle, you had pitched something that revolved around the scale of the world, and Roz, your initial project took place in a tent. Do you guys want to talk about, and Tomo, we already talked a little bit about how initially you wanted to, bring the guest into the experience using the camera.
So I wanted to how can I say, to bring the new devices, other external devices, bring into the VR environment rather than just using a VR software. So that's my start point.
Great. And Roz and Michelle, whoever wants to sort of talk about how you wound up where you did from where you started.
My first day of the fellowship, I went into Viacom and I put on the HTC Vive for the first time, even though I had pitched a project that was going to use it. And I think I did at least 15 experiences in that setup. And then I went over and used the Oculus CV1, and I was so incredibly excited by the ability to engage with the hand controllers and the haptics that I knew the idea that I had pitched wasn't going to work with this format. And so I really wanted to push myself to find a narrative that would make sense with this technology and really utilize the interactive capabilities of it and have that fit into the narrative and be part of the narrative experience.
That reminds me, so your project was for the HTC Vive, and yet it's a seated experience. So it's kind of an interesting choice considering the differentiating factor, or one of the differentiating factors is the fact that you can walk around a room-sized space. What was the decision there?
There's always a challenge because you're like, oh, it's amazing. Room scale interaction is really exciting, but just because you have all that stuff, it doesn't mean you need to use it. And so what I really wanted to use from the HTC Vive was just the ability to manipulate objects, pick things up, and then also having the haptic feedback. So when you try the experience, it makes sense for why it's seated, but I think in the future, I'm definitely going to have to do a room scale kind of walking around interaction just because that's such an exciting ability for it.
Cool. And Michelle, a little bit about your initial pitch and how you wound up where you did.
So my initial pitch dealt with, I'm really fascinated by scale in VR. The thing that hooked me to VR was the whale sunken ship experience in the demo, and so I've been kind of fascinated with pushing the limits of that. So I pitched initially an experience where you're really small, but you don't really understand that you're very small, and then through different mechanical actions, you grow so big that you're able to see the space from a new perspective. But then I got my partner on board, and he was like, "Where's this narrative in that?" And then he pitched me let's do something where you have to manipulate time and space. And I was like, that's a great idea. And then we kind of built onto each other until we got where we ended up, which is Curtain Call.
Great.
Yeah.
So is there anything for any of you that you're like really excited to see come to virtual reality, whether that's new hardware or wider access? Like what is the thing that motivates you to continue working on VR projects? Whoever would like to answer.
Okay, I really love to explore more storytelling content with the VR experience. Yeah.
Great.
Every time I look at VR blogs, I see all of these projects that are in the works for like interactive gloves and different ways that you can kind of merge the physical interaction with the virtual. So I'm really interested to see what's going to happen with that, and how like in the future we'll be able to interact with this virtual space in a way that's maybe a little more seamless. So I'm sure there are going to be more products coming out for that soon. So I'm excited to see what those are.
Great.
Yeah, in that vein, I'm excited for the headsets to be less tethered or to be kind of lighter, because I feel like that'll just add a completely different element to the experience and what people are able to develop. Because right now it is cumbersome to, you're still, even though you're immersed in the space, you're still aware of reality in a sense, even though you are immersed. So I'm excited for, where we'll be so immersed that we're there, it's virtual reality. So.
Well, thank you guys so much. This has been great. We loved working with you over the summer. And everyone should check out Michelle and Raz's projects are going to be up on the second floor later today. So definitely check those out. And thank you all very much.